Some stories stay with you because they're shocking. Others stay because they're quiet, because nothing explodes, no one yells, no dramatic moment announces itself. They're just ordinary situations that slowly sink in and then don't let go. Tonight, these are real stories from Reddit. Stories about awkwardness, money, memory, and survival. Moments where people realized, sometimes too late, that words matter, that intent isn't everything, and that the past never really stays in the past. These are the kinds of stories that don't end when the telling stops. This is Reddit Echoes. Story 1. We've been watching you for years. I think I might have scared a man so badly that he disappeared from his own neighborhood. And the worst part is, I didn't mean to. For years, literal years, there's been this guy who runs around my area, about a 3-square-mile loop. I only ever noticed him because of his hair, long, flowing, dramatic hair that somehow always looked perfect while he ran. When I first saw him, he was a little overweight, but he kept at it. Rainstorms, trash bags as makeshift ponchos, total commitment. Over time, he got fit, really fit, and without realizing it, my family and I started noticing. Not in a creepy way, at least that's what I told myself. I'm into fitness, so watching someone slowly transform like that was actually kind of inspiring. When I'd see him while driving, I'd cheer him on quietly in my car, just to myself, like, "You've got this, my dude." Somewhere along the way, it turned into a joke in my family. "There's my dude. Haven't seen my dude in a while. Hope he's okay." My sister texted me today she saw my dude running. It was harmless, an inside joke. No names, no interaction, just observation. And here's the thing, in all those years, I never once ran into him on foot. Until the day I did. I decided to take a different walking route. I look up, sunlight through the trees, and there it is, that glorious golden mane of hair. And my first thought was, oh my God, today's the day. Immediately followed by, why the hell did we ever start calling him my dude? He's getting closer, and taller, way taller than I expected, and suddenly I feel incredibly stupid. He jogs past me, and I should have let it end there.
Story 2. I tried to buy him something special. I grew up poor. Not the kind of poor people laugh about later. The kind where Christmas was planned all year just to make sure it didn't hurt too much when it finally arrived. Every year we got 3 things. 1 thing to wear, 1 book, 1 fun thing. That was it. And we were grateful. But even as a kid, you notice things. Like how your friend unwraps a MacBook and a Disney trip while you're trying really hard to sound excited about a hoodie. That feeling doesn't go away. It just gets quieter. My husband grew up in the opposite world. His family made around $300,000 a year. Christmas wasn't a day, it was a performance. Thousands of dollars under the tree. Every year. We've been together 5 years. Married for 2.5. We built our life ourselves. No financial help as adults. This year was the first time we could actually afford to spend real money on Christmas. And my husband had wanted a guitar for years. He'd never played before, but he talked about it constantly. Every time we walked past a music store, every time a song came on that he loved. We just couldn't afford it. Until now. So I researched, obsessively. Forums, reviews, beginner guides. I learned that decent starter guitars could be $150, and that some went all the way up to $5,000. My original budget was $500, and then I broke it, because for the first time in my life, I could. I asked him to cut back on my gift so I could surprise him with something special. I spent $900 Canadian on the guitar, plus another $200 on accessories. For someone who grew up counting every dollar, that number felt unreal, almost irresponsible. But I was excited, terrified, proud. Christmas morning comes, and we wait until his family arrives to open gifts. I'm practically buzzing. It's our turn. I bring out the guitar case. His face lights up. He opens it. Then he says, "Oh, thanks, babe. I've never heard of this brand." That was it. No big reaction, no excitement, just that. Before I can process it, his brother adds, "Oh yeah, that's a decent cheap one to start out with." Then his dad mentions he played in his 20s and says the brand is known for lower-end models, adds that they'd be happy to chip in for a really nice one next year if he sticks with it. It hit me all at once. That tight feeling in your chest when you're a kid again, pretending to be thrilled with your hoodie while everyone else compares vacations. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it wasn't about me. But then I noticed something. He didn't touch the guitar. Days went by. The thing he'd wanted for years just sat there. And every time I looked at it, I felt sick. The next morning, I talked to him, calmly, carefully. I'm not confrontational, so I forced myself to choose patience over anger. I asked if he was upset about the guitar, the brand, the look, anything. I told him his family's comments hurt, that it made it sound like I'd bought him a toy instead of something meaningful, that I'd put real thought into the color, the build, everything, because I wanted his first experience with music to feel good. He was genuinely surprised. He said he hadn't thought about it that way at all. He apologized for his reaction and for his family's. He said his comment about the brand was literally just that. He hadn't heard of it, nothing more. He told me he loved the guitar. He said Christmas was overwhelming and chaotic, and that's why he hadn't played it yet. And I believed him. It eased something in me I didn't realize was so tightly wound. I think the truth is, I'm just not used to subtle reactions. In my family, excitement had to be loud because it didn't happen often. This whole thing taught me something, though. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy thoughtfulness, and it definitely can't buy manners. And sometimes the thing that hurts the most isn't what people say, it's how easily they say it.
Story 4. I thought I knew awkward. I thought the worst part of that whole situation was me. I was wrong. After everything happened, after I had accepted that I might have accidentally traumatized a perfectly innocent jogger, I made the mistake of telling my family the full story. That's when I realized this wasn't just a personal flaw, it was hereditary. I told my mom first. I made her read the post. I figured she'd cringe, maybe shake her head, tell me I needed to think before I spoke. Instead, she laughed so hard I genuinely thought she was going to pass out. When she finally caught her breath, she said something that made my stomach drop. "Yeah, but that guy is kind of weird." I asked her what she meant, and that's when she casually mentioned that my dad had already talked to him. Apparently, my dad ran into my dude at the grocery store at some point and said, completely unprompted, "Oh hey, I see you running all the time. You're looking great. Keep it up." My dad used to be a coach, so encouraging random strangers is apparently just his thing. My dude apparently said thanks and slowly backed away. And my dad never thought to tell me or my sister. So now, from this man's perspective, a random family keeps popping up in his life, reassuring him that yes, we are all watching. Then my mom adds another detail. She says she saw him running recently and noticed his shoes looked worn out. And I swear, you have to hear this in a full mom voice. "Oh my gosh, his shoes looked so bad. I almost stopped him. I wish I knew his shoe size so I could get him new ones. Should I stop and ask him?" I lost it. I told her under no circumstances was she allowed to approach the running man again. No conversations, no gifts, no shoe-related interactions of any kind. At that moment, it really hit me. This poor guy didn't just hear one awkward person tell him he was being watched. He heard it from multiple members of the same family. That's not awkward. That's a pattern.
The next few days, I became hyper-aware of everything. Every time I drove, I scanned the sidewalks. I was actively hoping to see him, just to prove I hadn't completely destroyed his sense of safety. And my brain started spiraling. What would I do if I saw him again? Would I wave? Would I honk? Would I shout, "How are you?" into the wind as I drove past and accidentally blast his hair with my car? What if I was walking? Would all common sense leave my body entirely? Would I pull out my phone, open Reddit, and grin at him like a lunatic? I hate that I even considered these questions. That night, my mom read my post out loud to my dad while I was on the phone with them. She tried to censor my curse words at first. She made it about halfway through before she started laughing so hard she couldn't breathe and quietly swore anyway. She then announced that she thought I was famous now, that I was probably going to be on Good Morning America. She's a mom. Of course she did. I started telling them about some of the comments, people joking about making t-shirts, or elaborate plans to figure out my dude's shoe size, salt on the pavement, plaster casts, things I'm choosing not to think too hard about. And then my dad said something that somehow made everything worse. "Oh, by the way," he said, "I've seen him running recently. He's okay." I felt immediate relief. "Oh, thank God," I said. "Where?" "The same route, right outside his house." I froze. "You know where he lives?" "Oh yeah," my dad said. "I see him leave and come back sometimes when I'm driving." At this point, my sister said my mom was basically dead from laughter. I told my mom she absolutely could not buy him shoes and drop them off at his house. She agreed that would be awkward. So here's where we landed. Good news, he's still running. Bad news, we might actually be stalkers now. And I think the most uncomfortable part of all of this is realizing how easy it is to cross a line without meaning to. All it takes is routine, familiarity, and one family with absolutely no social awareness. So if you ever think you're awkward, just remember, somewhere out there is a jogger who's probably convinced an entire family has been tracking his cardio for years. And unfortunately for him, he's not wrong. Story 5. This is why money still hurts. I didn't realize how much money still hurt me until I was an adult and technically doing fine. Bills paid, food in the fridge, nothing urgent to worry about. And yet, one careless comment could still send me right back to being a kid. I grew up learning how to read rooms before I learned how to read books. You could tell who had money by how loudly they talked about it. Vacations, upgrades, just grabbing another one. In my house, money was quiet, careful, planned. So when people talk about it casually, like it's weightless, I feel it in my chest before I feel it in my head. That's the thing no one really explains. You don't just get over growing up without much. Even when you finally have it, money still feels fragile, temporary, like it could disappear if you look at it wrong. I've noticed I still apologize when I spend it, still over-explain purchases, still feel guilty for wanting things. And when someone dismisses effort because it wasn't expensive enough, or impressive enough, or branded correctly, it doesn't feel like criticism. It feels like erasure, like all that planning and saving and choosing carefully didn't count. I know people don't always mean harm. Most of the time, they don't even notice. But that's kind of the point. When you've never had to worry, you don't realize how sharp your words can be. Money doesn't just buy comfort, it buys insulation. From embarrassment, from second guessing, from that constant background noise of, is this enough? So yeah, I'm okay now, but money still hurts. Not because I don't have it, but because I remember exactly what it felt like when I didn't, and how easy it is for people to forget that feeling ever existed. Story 6. She survived, then spoke up. My grandmother doesn't look like someone who would ever scare a room into silence. She's polite, composed, the kind of woman who still writes thank you notes and speaks softly enough that people lean in without realizing it. If you met her today, you would never guess what she survived. So when my grandparents were at a dinner with friends of friends one evening, no one expected her to say anything when the conversation drifted into politics and eventually immigration. One of the men at the table started talking, loud, confident, repeating all the usual lines about illegal immigrants, stealing jobs, bringing crime, ruining the country. You know the type. Everyone else did what people usually do in those moments. They got quiet, looked down at their plates, waited for it to pass. My grandmother let him finish. Then she smiled politely and said, "Before you continue, there's something I should tell you." The table went silent. She said, "I was an illegal immigrant." The man laughed at first, like he thought she was making a joke. She didn't laugh back. She continued calmly, "I used fake papers. If I hadn't, I would have been murdered." Then she looked directly at him and asked the question that ended the entire conversation. "Would you have preferred that I was killed?" No one spoke. The man who had been lecturing everyone about immigration couldn't look anyone in the eye. He didn't argue back. He quietly took back everything he had said. A few days later, I read some of the comments on that story to my grandmother. People thanking her, calling her brave. She listened quietly, then wiped her eyes and told me more stories she'd never shared before. About the night her house was bombed, and her mother covered her newborn baby with her own body, not realizing shrapnel had torn into her knee until blood soaked the floor. About a stranger who illegally got penicillin and saved her life. About the time they were stopped by a soldier, and my great-father tried to talk to him not about politics, but about children, about family, about being human. And somehow that worked. She told me how her great-grandmother sometimes said she couldn't take it anymore, that maybe they should give themselves up. And every time, my great-grandfather would say, "Tomorrow will be better," even when it never was. My grandmother was so young during the war that she didn't know life could be different. It wasn't until afterwards that she realized children could laugh out loud, that they didn't have to hide, that safety was real. Our family survived because a Christian family hid them, knowing it could get them killed. And even after everything, the fear, the cruelty, the loss, my grandmother doesn't speak with hatred. She speaks with gratitude. She remembers the people who helped, the ones who chose kindness when it was dangerous. That's why when she finally spoke up at that dinner, no one argued, because she wasn't debating an idea, she was telling the truth. And sometimes